I believe most of us have experienced this. You finish a film and turn off the television, and suddenly the room feels different, quieter, heavier. Fear isn't always loud. It doesn't need to scream or leap out of the dark. Sometimes it waits, in the silence between sounds, in the moments when nothing seems to move, in the quiet spaces of our mind. And then it begins to fill those empty spaces. Somehow, silence stays with us longer than shock. Some horror fades the moment the credits roll, and other stories linger, like something unresolved, because they were never about the monsters. They were about what we carry inside of us. Hello everyone, my name is Falcon, and welcome to What Am I Watching? Today I wanted to step away from doing something specific and talk about something more abstract. Not a movie, or a game, or even an ARG, but a type of horror. The kind that stays with you long after the screen goes dark. So turn off the lights, stay a while. Let's learn a few things together. Why loud horror fades? Well, we remember the jump, the noise, and the sudden shock. Our hearts spike, our muscles tense, and adrenaline floods the body. But then, it passes. That's because a jump scare is just a survival response. A reflex. The brain reacts, and then it resets. By morning, most of it's just gone. But what remains are the feelings we couldn't name, the unease we couldn't explain, and the stories that touched something real. Psychological horror doesn't frighten us for a moment. It unsettles us. It sticks with us for much, much longer. Because it doesn't trigger a reflex, it triggers recognition. Loud horror startles the body, but psychological horror unsettles the mind. And the mind doesn't forget easily. It revisits. It replays, and it searches for meaning. Horror doesn't always begin with monsters. Sometimes it begins the moment a child realizes that the world is no longer safe. In the film Tigers Are Not Afraid, trauma reshapes reality through a child's eye. Violence is everywhere. Loss is ordinary. Streets feel abandoned, adults disappear, and childhood games become survival rituals. When reality becomes unbearable, imagination becomes protection. Not escape, protection. Children process trauma differently than adults. They translate fear into symbols, into stories, and into things that they can understand. So what we see isn't fantasy, it's trauma. It's trauma trying to make sense of itself. And that is far more unsettling than anything lurking in the dark, because we recognize the truth behind it. But trauma doesn't always distort reality. Sometimes it leaves an emptiness that refuses to stay quiet. The orphanage is not haunted by ghosts. It's haunted by an absence, by a memory, by love that has nowhere left to go. It doesn't want to be forgotten. Some places don't hold spirits. They hold echoes. Echoes of voices, of footsteps, and of moments that can never return. Grief changes how we perceive space. Rooms feel different. Silence feels heavier, and familiar places begin to feel unfamiliar. The past doesn't remain buried. It lingers in the spaces where laughter once lived. And the pain of letting go can feel more terrifying than anything supernatural. Because letting go means accepting loss. And acceptance is very rarely easy. Then again, sometimes grief doesn't leave at all. Sometimes it stays, waiting to be acknowledged. No matter how long we try to look away, in the Babadook, sorrow takes shape. Depression lingers like a presence in the home. It's not loud. It's not violent. It's just there. Exhaustion becomes suffocating, and motherhood becomes a battle against something invisible yet relentless. The monster in the Babadook is not the horror. Grief is. Because grief ignored does not disappear. It waits. It grows. It presses inwards. Psychologists often describe suppressed grief as something that resurfaces, not as a memory, but as pressure, emotional weight, and eventually it does demand to be seen. Grief is patient. It waits in the background. It grows in the silence. And when ignored long enough, it can begin to consume. Not suddenly, but slowly. And that makes it far more frightening than any teddy bear jumping out of the dark. It's interesting that today the same emotional unease is finding new forms in popular media. Not through creatures, but through the corruption of the familiar. Analog horror and ARG storytelling twists what once felt safe, where we used to go for comfort. They look like something you remember, something familiar, something you once trusted. An old broadcast, children's programming, public safety messages, or even home recordings. But this familiarity becomes wrong, and nostalgia turns unsettling. Our brains are wired to trust the familiar. When something recognizable feels off, the mind searches for what's wrong. And when we can't find the answer, unease begins. Grounded settings make terror feel disturbingly real. This isn't an evolution of horror, it's a new branch, one that I hope is here to stay. And this new branch reminds us that the unfamiliar has always been frightening, but the almost familiar, well, the almost familiar is way, way worse. Across media, the same truths appear. Games like Silent Hill and films like Session 9. Psychological horror in all of its forms. They understand something fundamental. Fear rarely comes from what haunts us. It comes from what we remember, what we regret, and what we refuse to confront. It comes from what lives within us. The mind doesn't resolve grief quickly. Unanswered emotions remain active. Ambiguity keeps us searching for meaning, searching for answers. And what remains unresolved? Well, it's in our nature for that to stay with us. You see, the brain will continue the story long after the screen goes dark. It searches for resolution, and when none is given, the feeling remains unfinished. Psychological horror lingers because it does not end. It continues in memory, in reflection, in the quiet moments when nothing is there, and yet something feels wrong, like it's watching you, just over there in the corner, just out of your peripheral vision, daring you to look again, and somehow also hoping you don't. The most haunting stories were never about what's hiding in the dark. They're about what we believe might be there. And what we imagine is there is often shaped by what we carry with us. And sometimes the hardest things to face is what refuses to leave. Long after the lights are turned on, after the room is quiet, and the story is over. If you made it this far, it means that something here resonated with you. If you enjoy exploring the deeper side of horror, consider subscribing. And let me know in the comments, what horror stayed with you long after it ended? I'm always on the lookout for new ones, and I'm dying to see more. Have you seen Tigers Are Not Afraid, The Orphanage, or The Babadook? If you have, what did you think of them? And did they stick with you? Do you think these three deserve a deeper dive? Anyway, thank you all for being here this evening, and I do hope to see you in the next one.